Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the second part of the Etude number 6 in the key of G major. Etude number 6 is a very fast etude with a lot of notes, a lot of scale passages, and a lot of arpeggios. We're going to be looking at the large middle portion of this etude today. All of this section is in the key of E minor, and so you have to consider that when you practice the middle portion of this etude. Let's hear how it would sound. In this section, the composition has changed keys to the key of E harmonic minor. That's the E scale with one sharp and then an accidental of D sharp at the top. So let's practice that first. The range of this scale goes up to high C natural. There are a number of arpeggios in this excerpt. The first one is the E minor arpeggio. And let's review the fingers, E, G, B, E, G, B, and then play them up and down. The next arpeggio we need to deal with is called the B7 arpeggio. It's a B major arpeggio that's got an A natural in it. So the notes are B, D sharp, F sharp, and A. Then later, we have an arpeggio that's called the D sharp diminished 7. That's an ugly arpeggio with 4 notes, D sharp, F sharp, A, and C. Let's play it from the low D sharp up to the high C. D sharp, F sharp, A, C. D sharp, F sharp, A, C. We also have the A minor arpeggio in one measure, A, C, E. As you can see, this section has 4 very challenging arpeggios in it, and you will need to know them with some competency before you try to play the music as written. Let's mention the warm-up you should be doing before you practice. Long tones, the scales of the etudes you'll be practicing, then small sections of the hardest parts of the etude. Let's take a look at the counting and rhythm challenges in this section of the etude. Most of the etude is in straight 16th notes, which will be counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. But we have occasionally this dotted 16th note, like the pickup. 3, a 1, 3, a 1, 3, a 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now let's take a look at measures 11, 12, and 13. We'll slow the tempo down a bit and look at that rhythm starting with the A minor arpeggio. 1 and 2, a 3 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2, a 3. So there's 2 slightly tricky areas in this section of the composition. There are a few unusual notes we need to call attention to. We have an A sharp, so that's a chromatic neighbor to the B natural at the beginning of this section. We have an A sharp again, which is the lower neighbor to the B major arpeggio. And then we have another neighbor note chromatic, D sharp, E, D sharp, E. Honestly, I think E flat almost every time, E, E flat, E. And then in the B major arpeggio, we have the D sharps again. Again, you can think E flat if you like. And then finally in the D sharp diminished 7 arpeggio, we have a D sharp again. C, A, F sharp, D sharp, or E flat. So there's a number of sharp notes that are a little bit unusual out of context. Now let's take a look at how to sequence the technique of this excerpt together. We're going to start with the first section. So we have the pickup notes plus the first 2 arpeggios. 3, a 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Let's look at that first, the E minor arpeggio. I always encourage students, don't stop at a bar line. Always play what you want to practice and practice the next note. In that way, you will not form a habit of stopping at the measure line. Now, the next part would be to practice that B and B7 arpeggio. Notice again, practice the arpeggio plus the next note. Now we have 3 measures in which we play mostly scale material that's legato, with the exception of the first note E, and it's straight 16th notes. Not very difficult. I put the dashes to remind you that at the end of a slur, we do not clip. Here's an example of a clipped slur. I hear a lot of students do this. You can tell the articulation very well, but it's not very musical. We want to connect everything, with the exception of the first note of those measures, should be legato. The next 3 measures have the arpeggio with E minor scale material. Not very difficult. I find a little bit challenging going from the arpeggio at the end of the line to the G natural and the rest of the E minor scale material. So at home, I practice this a lot. Etc. Together, that will sound like. Now let's take a look at measure 24 by itself, the B7 arpeggio at the end of the line. D sharp, F sharp, B, D sharp, F sharp, A. You recall in the previous slide I mentioned I practiced it a lot. You'll want to pay special attention to this measure because it's a little bit awkward going from that measure to the next line. The next 2 measures are relatively easy, and it's all slurred, all E minor scale material. The next 2 measures belong together. They are an A minor arpeggio and a D sharp diminished 7 arpeggio, a rise and a fall. Check the rhythm one more time. 1 and 2, a 3 and 2 and 3 and. You'll notice the C natural is in common with both of those arpeggios. The final 4 measures are all in the key of E minor and involve both the scale and the E minor arpeggio. Practice slowly to make sure that you are playing the articulation in the right place. There are a number of articulation issues in these 16 measures. Practice each pair of measures, or even one measure, very slowly to ensure that you build a habit from the beginning of tonguing only in the place where it's written. If you find out later through your teacher or yourself that you've been tonguing incorrectly, it's going to be very difficult to break the habits that you created early. Now let's look at some opportunities to create a phrase. The composer did not write any dynamic markings in here, so it's up to us to create them. I've given some suggested rise and falls on the music. And there's one that your music can't see, and it's at the very last measure of the arpeggio. That's a good place for a diminuendo as well. There's some just natural things to remember. If the line ascends, it's okay to crescendo. If the line descends, it's okay to diminuendo. The one exception in this case is that E minor scale in the second line, where I've decided to crescendo to bring out the rise and fall that's coming up next. To build tone quality, always start with long tones and then create a pattern of finger movement while you build a consistent airstream underneath. So let's look at the E minor arpeggio first, playing E. Then move fingers with air. Then play with the same tone quality, you just happen to be moving your fingers. Our goal always is have the same tone quality on both long tones and fast passages. I want to remind you, journal your progress so that you can track your goals on a daily and weekly and monthly basis. This will give you a sense of accomplishment and show your progress to both yourself and your musician friends as you prepare for these all-region auditions. This is the end of part 2 for Etude number 6. If I can be of assistance to you, please contact me at the email address or phone number given. Good luck.